Brewers, let's go Brewers, cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Is that how we do it?
Yeah.
That was pretty bad, let's go Brewers, but I mixed it up with the... Okay, anyways, cheers.
Yeah, episode 113, Joel Fleischman Happy Hour podcast.
Prost.
We have Joel Fleischman, market leader of Camelsport, Nick Whitty, and Glenn Elmer of Adashun Jones and Signature Homes. Glenn, thanks for joining.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And we have game 3 of the Brewer game tonight. Marcus is going.
Yep.
Glenn's a big Brewer fan. We were talking about it off air. And his dad was a huge Brewer fan.
Yes, he was.
Predictions. You said you've watched a lot of games. Predictions for tonight.
Brewers have been up and down. Been hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold, but I think they're going to pull it out. I think they're going to stay alive.
I think the weird happened in game 1 and game 2.
Yeah.
The plays at first base, the pitcher. Like, I think they shook the cobwebs out. Like, okay, this is the playoffs. Yep. I think we're good.
They're going to get hot at the right time, and then let's keep it going.
This is going to land 2 days after this game, so I'm going to reserve judgment because either you guys are going to look really smart or really dumb. So I'm just not going to say anything.
Yes.
Not to talk
go Brewers.
Not to talk sports too long, but thoughts on Cheerio?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he's a pretty incredible player. I mean, he's setting some impressive standards for a lot of players to follow. I love watching him. I mean, it's fun. It's just fun to watch the guy. You know,
will he play out his contract? Do you guys think he's going to play out his contract?
I don't know how he could.
Right. I mean, he's going to say
he's going to get the big money.
He's going to say rip that up. I don't care. Right. I mean, he's got to.
I don't know if he intentionally will go searching for that, but Yankees, Baltimore, somebody's.
Brewers can't afford to keep him. No. I mean, if I don't know how they would unless.
And it's a 10-year, $80 million contract, right? I'm not wrong. But you just think the agent or somebody's going to step in. I actually think a lot of times the players' union steps in and says, you can't reset the bar here. We have standards. We have 5-year contracts. Like what you did, you're making all of the 1,000 players on, these 1,000 players look bad. You need to go back in and renegotiate. I think a lot of times it comes down to players' union.
Most likely.
Yeah.
And when you're a player,
they have some leverage in that.
Yeah, when you have a player that's setting the standard, so to speak, and it gives them a lot of leverage, right? And
I'd like to think Brewers have some leverage since there is a contract in place. Like, hey, right, you please re-sign with us, but I don't know.
I lose a lot,
hundreds of millions of dollars.
I think about one of the reasons my father walked away from baseball for a little while was this big strike. In the baseball strike, and how disappointed he was, and how it just crushed the fans. But in this situation, it's a lot like you see a lot of major sports athletes that just seem to find a way around breaking contracts, right, and changing the terms because they're hot at that moment. But it also goes the other way a lot of times too. Where you see these big contracts get signed, and then all of a sudden they have. I don't know what happens, but the light switch gets turned off, sure. And we've seen that time and time again. So
how many guys have big years in there? Last year before free agency or whatever, right? Willie Adames.
Exactly. I mean, the list is long, in every sport.
Probably longer the other way, right?
Yeah,
this way
for
around.
sure. Yep.
So it's going to be fun to watch, though. And go Brewers! Hopefully,
Brewers.
Celebrating in 2 days here when this airs.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Glenn, you've been in the building real estate industry for 30 years.
Yes.
Starting property management with Adashun Jones, or GM, worked your way up to eventual co-owner. Can you kind of talk about the beginning and how you got to obviously where you're at now, but you just kind of go back to yesteryear and talk about how it all started?
Yeah, so my family is actually from the Stoughton, Wisconsin area. And
Stoughton Trailer?
Yeah, Stoughton Trailer. My dad actually was the plant manager at Stoughton Trailer.
Shut up. There you go.
Yeah, and he started his own company when I was in middle school, and eventually built that company up to be a pretty substantial manufacturer of industrial robotic machinery. And it was a really nice business to be in and a great industry to be in, but a very high stress, fast-paced industry. And when I was in high school, my parents got the opportunity to be acquired by Mid-States Aluminum in Fond du Lac.
Yes.
So the Colin family ended up purchasing our company unbeknownst to myself and my siblings. And Mom and Dad said one day on a Sunday afternoon around dinner, we're moving to Fond du Lac.
How old were you?
I was 17.
Okay, so it's going to be a senior?
It was just going in senior year.
Oh, you're like, hell no.
It was an interesting conversation, to say the least.
That had to groom you for life.
Yeah, it was a changing moment because
that's what I mean. It had to be a life-changing moment, and you had to learn so much in those 12 months.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we thought the family business was our future. Right, and that was the plan. And I think for the most part,
not only the move, it was a double dip.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, because I think for the most part, my parents thought the same, but my father had just went through quadruple bypass surgery and had a significant heart attack, and was just looking at the reality of how much stress that there is in that, and wanted something that was less stressful. And I understood and respected that part of it because it was a very long recovery, and we knew that it was going to be an uphill battle that way. So it was a good thing. So we moved to Fond du Lac. My parents moved to Fond du Lac, and I stayed back and ended up meeting my now wife, of now going to be 32 years in January.
That's because you had an apartment when you were 17. That's
correct.
Why you met her.
Yes, that was exactly right. There's a lot of truth to that, actually. So and the best part is I was living in an apartment with my older brother.
Yeah.
My 21-year-old older brother.
Oh, goodbye.
So
you were the big man on Stoughton for sure.
Correct. So there were some good times being had there.
Gosh. I feel like this pod could go a lot of different ways.
This has just turned into a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah. So we had some good times, hung back there, ended up meeting my wife Nancy, and
shout out to Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
Yes. Hopefully she hears this. So we decided that it was going to be a time to start a family, and we wanted to get closer to my parents just for childcare purposes, things like that. So we had our first child. Was Elizabeth was only 3 months old, and we were moving to Fond du Lac. So we moved up here, and I was actually hired at Mid-States Aluminum because I was a tool and die machinist by trade, okay? Had been since the age of 9, right? And that started very young.
I got to take a time out. Every builder we have on, why I love this industry, and I get goosebumps and tear up every time, you guys have the most amazing stories. This guy's cool as hell. This is awesome. So keep going. I love it.
I appreciate that. But we were workers. It's just the way it was, and we didn't know anything else than that. So when I decided to move up to Fond du Lac, I was hired on by Mid-States Aluminum to be in their machine shop and to work alongside some of the people that left with our family business and went and followed up north, including my sister and my brother. Both ended up at Mid-States Aluminum as well as part of the purchase of the business, and then my father. So it was going to be a family reunion kind of situation when I got here. But the day I started at Mid-States Aluminum, I got a call from Leo Santini from Mercury Marine. And Leo basically called and said, "Hey, I understand you're coming to town, and I would like to take you to lunch." So I went to lunch with him, and by the end of the conversation, I was a Mercury Marine employee.
Did you know who he was before that?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, the name got tipped off. Somebody that I knew that was in similar circles was a machinist at Mercury Marine and in the maintenance department, and they were like, we'd like to have you come here instead.
And Leo was third in line, or where was? Yeah. He was way up.
He was way up there in the ranks. He was heading all of HR, so it was a big deal for me as this young kid, a 21-year-old kid, to get a call from Leo Santini.
And at that point, they had a couple thousand people, right?
Yeah, big operation, right? Yeah, so anyway, I went to work for Mercury Marine. I think my father was a little disappointed in me for that change, but when he understood the difference between what came with that and the opportunities, he was proud of me and for making that decision at that age. So long story short, while I was working at Mercury Marine, I was hating the night shift concept, and that's back then you didn't get on day shift at Mercury. When you started at Mercury Marine, you started on second or third shift, and you were there 20 plus years before you got a shot at day shift.
It was and it was amazing they could find people to do it. You accepted your role, and you kind of, how do you say it? You accepted your fate.
Correct.
There's so much more opportunity now, which really people, and again, it's not like me and Glenn, us old timers, back in our day, it's really almost amazing that people accepted that.
Right.
There wasn't a mindset of no, I'm going to find a first shift.
It's just what it was.
You just signed up and plowed the horse, right? You were just a plow horse, Yeah,
and just to imagine this, by this time Glenn Jr. had come along, so we were two little kids at that time, ages 3 and infant, and I'm working second shift at Mercury Marine, so I've got my days open, and I'm not the kind of guy that can just sit around and watch TV. It's just never been my thing. I'm very, very active and want to have my hands in something. So I needed a part-time gig. So I applied at Adashun Jones Real Estate as a property manager. At that time, Adashun Jones had about 100 rental units all around Fond du Lac County and a few in Oshkosh or whatever. Funny part about that was that I interviewed with Frank Adashun and Jeff Jones, and I got passed over, and I did not get the job. So I went back to
you never mentioned that to them again in your career.
Yeah, they heard about that a time or two throughout the years. But long story short is they hired a lovely young lady. She lasted 2 weeks and quit. And then they called me up and said, "Hey, are you still interested in this job?"
Groveled a little bit.
Yeah, right? and I was like, "No, I'm good. Thanks for the opportunity." Right. And then they're like, "No, we really please come in and talk to us again." So I came in and sat down and we had a nice conversation. And all of a sudden, I'm a property manager. I did that for 2 years straight, 8 hours a day at Adashun Jones, and 8 hours a night.
I want to give a shout out to we run we have 2 different second shifts in North Wrightstown for truss plant and for our offsite plant. And if any of you guys second shifters or third shifters listening, I know a lot of them run 2 jobs. Yep. And I know a lot of them run 3-4 nights, 3-4 hours of sleep. Yep. And I appreciate anybody that works those hours. They're rock stars. So all of you listening, if any of you are, I truly appreciate you, and I've said it before on this pod, I think even. There's times I go to the bathroom because I'm getting older at 2 a.m., and I know somebody's building trusses right this moment.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, thank you guys. I appreciate that service to Drexel and to the builders and everybody, because third shifts are really, really powerful, and second shifts too, because we do fill-in then. Okay. If we get behind, that's where our fill-in is.
Gotcha.
And not that Glenn's ever called me for an emergency. But they're a busy company, right?
Never happened.
And it's like a restaurant. We leave gaps. We leave an open table, if you will, for those emergencies, right? And those guys are so good at it. So, anyways, shout out to them. Keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of lived that life for a while. 2 years straight working 2 full-time jobs. And my wife pretty much just told me one day, I didn't come here to Fond du Lac, Wisconsin to raise kids by myself.
Yeah, where you
So
been?
I had to make a decision. And I, at Adashun Jones, I gave my notice and said, guys, it's been great. Appreciate the run, but I'm not leaving Mercury Marine. It's my main gig. And,
that's your dream.
Yeah, and it was so funny because I was standing in the office of Jeff Jones, and he looked at me and said, "Do you want to build houses?" So what do you mean, do I want to build houses? And he said, yeah, we have this construction company, which I knew. Didn't know anything about it. He said, we need somebody to come in and run this construction company. We don't like the way it's going. Doesn't model the boutique high-end real estate company that we've built. We just really don't like where it's going. Do you want to do that? And I kind of laughed. I said, I'm a machinist, right? You understand that. It's not my thing. And they said, well, tell you what, why don't you go to school and we'll bring you on full-time as a property manager / general manager of the construction business. So I thought, what the hell? Why not? It's worth a gamble, I guess. I got to go on day shift. That was a big win. So I went to school at night for 2 years straight in Appleton,
wow. So
4 nights a week.
Bet on yourself, grinded through it.
Yeah,
Crazy.
just to get my graduate builder's designation and to basically have have some comprehension of construction, right?
What are trusses?
Yeah, what is the whole process? For those builders that listen to this podcast, and they're probably chuckling right now because everybody came up differently, right?
Oh, it's been unbelievable with pods.
Generation to generation.
Correct. Normally it's I'm working with Dad, and Dad taught me how to swing a hammer when I was 9, and now I got none of that. I literally had none of that. So I had to learn really quick how to run a construction company.
But your dad did own a business, which is huge.
Yeah.
So you kind of knew the process, procedures of thumb back. Like you said, what's the process? You've always been a process guy as long as I've known you. And I think in the machine, tool, and die, right, that's micrometers and process and
that's all it is. Yep.
Profitability. And so, industries do cross,
Yep.
So, and you seem like you had a talent to merge those industries.
Yeah, it was challenging, and it was fun. Had the opportunity to kind of jump into that and learn learn the hard way sometimes. You know how it is. You learn sometimes by mistakes, and gosh, I made plenty of those. But long story short is that we got to the point where things were really going well with that. I hired some core key people. I'm just going to give a quick shout to 2 of those guys, Tom Schaefer and Tim Bell, were the 2 first people I hired in that company all those years ago. And Tom retired about 2.5 years ago, and Tim just retired in August.
I worked directly with those guys.
Yeah,
they were really legends in the Fond du Lac community as far as construction. I'm guessing most tradesmen subs have run into both of those individuals in decades. So
indeed, yeah. So I was very blessed to have those guys, and they taught me a lot. They taught me a lot about building in general. So then, that's where we grew that, and we grew the business, and we finally got a brand that we could be proud of. Right, we had to change the name because the name had already had that stigma of it was the worst name in the world, Bedrock Builders. You know how many times I've been called Fred Flintstone? Bedrock Builders. It was a horrible name. It was a cool logo. The logo was cool, but the name was terrible, so I had to get rid of it. So we did, and the rest was history from there. We launched Signature Homes in 1996, and we really got going after there and started building it. And we were already partnered with Drexel and had already been brought under Albert's wing at that point in time, and I think this is when I was just starting to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, 96 would have been when I just got aboard full time.
Yeah.
Really,
I think you were really. I would say you were probably the most energetic guy I think I ever met in my entire life. The first time I met you, I literally sat back and think, man, I gotta start working out and start drinking more caffeine, because you were like going 3 million miles an hour.
We've been down that rabbit hole on lots of podcasts. It was not always for the best. It was not always for the best, but. I still have that in me, but with time comes wisdom, right?
Oh yeah. Well, you get a little. I don't want to say smarter, but sometimes you get a little.
You weren't the least energetic guy I ever met.
No, I think we probably got along really well for the same reason, because we both had the same motor, but
we ran pretty hot.
Yeah,
hot.
For
not
sure.
In an argumentative way, but we ran like everything was right now, right?
Correct. Gotta go. And that's still probably to this day one of my biggest faults is I don't really have an off switch when it comes to that. It's just like I'm pushing probably too hard sometimes. But it's fun.
Second, not to labor on like the past, but running hot. So obviously, right, pre-technology with phones and internet and all that, like what was the difference back then to now? Right? Obviously, everybody runs hot now and can't turn it off, but like what was it like at that point?
Well, the thing that I tell my children this, and someday I'll tell my grandchildren hopefully this. The smartphone was the greatest single invention ever made in history. At the same time, was the worst invention ever made in history. Back then, you had the ability to run hot, but when you went home, you were done. I had a pager at that time. You imagine that. I had a pager, and that was more for the property management side of the business, and that would drive me insane, because I'd get the text messages at 2 o'clock in the morning, their pager going off because some basement flooded or whatever, But you got to shut it off, and you had more time with your family, and you got more downtime and de-stressing. Today, with technology where it's at, and with real-time everything, instant news, instant information, in the smartphone thing is horrible. But at the same time, it's probably the best invention ever made, right?
Although I kept it with me. Like if I couldn't get my work done, I knew it was sitting there, right? It was on paper. Everybody had an in basket, and it would get full. Like by the end of the day, because you had so much stuff coming in. So that was always interesting. The fax machine was hilarious looking back. That probably was the worst invention because that was supposed to take over the industry, right? Like Glenn is only going to contact you via fax. Builders are only going to send plans through the fax machine with their order. Yep. That was actually crazy. And some builders started to do that, or you might have even embraced that for a while. So you'd wake up in the morning, to come in, and you'd have to grab the faxes because there were orders sitting there. Like, this is the future. Correct. Everyone's saying it. But the BlackBerry was great. Crackberry, we called it.
Yeah,
good. Again, great and bad. But how it really was the tension ran hot. Probably a few more face-to-face. And probably, even though a sense of urgency was now and the energy was there, things did lag a little bit. Mm-hmm. You had 2 or 3 days maybe to put out a fire instead of right effing now, you know.
It was more personal too, I think.
It had to be.
You were far more personal with your clients, more personal with your contractors, suppliers, and that part of it I do kind of miss.
It's just not an email chain. These email threads, and I do no longer participate in them. I do not, which has probably saved my life.
Yeah, I need to do the same.
Because that's when it becomes so impersonable.
Yep.
That's when you just get this emotional bandwidth of hatred. And I'm just like, if you text me an open-ended question, as you guys know, sitting here, I'm going to call you back, and internally I'm going to chew your ass out. Like, don't do that to me.
Yep.
Like, we're going to be 7 emails, and there's 7 things you just questioned here.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. So, if I had to sum it all up, the main difference for me was the little bit of disconnectivity that you had then you don't get today. Unless you are regimented enough to say, hey, my phone is staying in my car when I get out of it, when I pull in my garage, or I
think email had a really dark period, at least for me in my life. When email first came out, Glenn and I might email back, and I was doing 300 to 400 emails a day, 7 days a week. Yeah. When email first came out, I'm like, this is it. Again, I can apply my energy through email, and I can connect with every builder we have in real time every day, and not through the phone call, fax machine thing. And that exploded. Glenn and I would go back with Tim Lindsley, shout out to salesman, and Tom and Tim, and hell, whoever else we'd CC, and we'd be going back and forth 20 times by 7 a.m. sometimes, or 9 o'clock at night. Yeah. Yeah, that was actually horrible. That was not a great period for me in my life looking back in those ways, right?
And for me, it's still very much real in that respect, because of the crossover between the construction and business and the real estate business.
And real estate's still very email-centric, technology-centric, right? Title company stuff, right?
It's changing. It's changing. We're improving and becoming more effective in communication there as well. But it's definitely still there.
That industry is maybe even worse than construction real estate as far as
volume is
volume, right?
On the building side, on the custom home building side, when you guys are starting out with a client and say, you're through contract, you're going to roll, this house is going to go. Do you set expectations with homeowners of, hey, this is when we're working, this is when we're not, or is it wild, wild west?
No, it's right in our contract. It's reviewed and discussed. I put it to my clients like this. I really value my people. I really value my family life, and I value yours. All three of you sitting here, I value all of yours. You need that. And if you don't have the ability to shut it off and separate from your client, we have it right in our contract. It's after 5 o'clock, Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock. If you don't hear from, you're going to hear from us the following morning. Or you're going to hear from us on Monday if it's a Friday.
We're a business like anybody else.
Yep.
We're not.
This is not our lives. Yeah. I mean, it's important to us, but we have family lives too.
And you also appreciate, you may be thinking about it in your kitchen. I want to change the plumbing fixtures, and it's 7:30 at night.
Yeah.
I appreciate that with people, but again, you can send it off, but I'm not going to respond.
Yeah, and the thing is that so many people, I don't think they do it intentionally, but
I don't think so either.
They do it just because it's what they have their free time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, it's their knee-jerk reaction is all it is.
Exactly.
Or
Imagine
they're taking their kids or their parents out. Let's go check out the lake house tonight and see how far it's coming along, and then Dad points out something in the corner, and you should make sure they check on that.
Yeah.
And it's actually a trap because you want to respond.
Yep.
But the second you do, you've now opened your door to that for the rest of the build.
And you have to wait till the morning to do that, because if you don't, you're going to be up all night thinking about it.
Yeah, that's also
good, bad, or indifferent, right?
It's true.
But if you just look at it like this, most people when they get home from work, they're going to go out and they're going to walk through their home that's under construction. Bottom line, right? They're not going to do it during the day because they're at work, right? So that's where I think people lose the connection with builders, and I feel sorry for a lot of builders that they're like, hey, they look at it as they got to be available at night too, because that's when their customers are available, and that's tough.
I get a sense of things, as you know, right? Spiritual sense, whatever, or just maybe I drink too much, or who knows.
Yes.
But I have a sense that I need to ask you this, and I have a feeling somebody listening needs to hear this. So that's kind of weird, but kind of almost an elephant in a room. We're talking about stress and different things. You had a pivot in your life, and you are changed. When I see you now, you're changed, and I know you know that. You had a significant widowmaker heart attack that should have left you 6 feet under.
Correct.
And your dad had heart problems. So explain to me how your life has changed for this heart attack that you lived through. Maybe give advice to people that were you prior, or how your life has changed significantly. Kind of walk us through that life-changing moment for you, how you were, how you are now, how you think about things different.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's had a major health event like that. I mean, I was full cardiac arrest, had to be resuscitated twice. Spent a couple weeks on life support in Florida while I was on vacation, and it's one of those things.
This is how many years ago? 5.
This would be 8 years. New Year's Eve.
It's always longer than you think, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's thank goodness I'm still here. But it was one of those things where you go 100 miles an hour, you're invincible. You look at it as it may have happened to my dad, but it's not going to happen to me. That crossed my mind 1,000 times. I'm not my dad. My dad's, when the day is done, genetics are genetics. I mean, you can do a lot of things, but my dad and I are identical when it comes to personality. We were identical when it comes to work ethic. We were identical when it comes to stress. We take stress and we just inhale it. It's like food, right? So stress was I never evaluated stress as being a problem. I looked at it as just a part of life. Well, guess what? It's a big problem. It's a major problem. Lifestyle changes, changing diet and exercise were a big thing for me. I had to lose a lot of weight quick, and I did. I lost 100 pounds in 6.5 months. It changed a lot of things in my life to try to be healthier. But when the day is done, genetics are genetics, and you can't control stress to a certain degree. If you're going to get out of bed in the morning and go to work and do something, you're going to have stress. Here's how you handle it.
And I think I think some people chase non-stress jobs, but if your job, I've said this before, if your job doesn't have a purpose and a mission, if your job has a purpose and a mission, you truly believe into it, inherently it should have stress because you're just inherently pushing yourself, even if it's just yourself applying the stress. Looking back 8 years ago versus now, what little things have you changed in your life, or big things that you look back on like this is something? And again, maybe not diet, more mentally. How do you control the demons, if you will, or the Glennisms, right, or whatever? Because I have the same, as you know, you said, the most energetic guy you ever met, and the way you said it, right? When you met me, that was a blessing and a curse. It wasn't 100%. Back when you would have told me that, I would have said, yeah, he thinks I'm the coolest guy in the world. It was a blessing and a curse, for anybody that met me. Like, this dude's a fucking lot. Still am, right, guys? But whatever. Well, how do you control it now? How have you learned to tune it down, or what steps do you take? What kind of things do you do to say, Glenn's getting a little fucking wound up here. I gotta back this shit off. How do you do that now? Because you must intentionally do that.
Well, to a certain degree, you try to control it, by managing stress differently.
How do you do it differently?
Not taking things so incredibly deep. People draw things in differently. Some people, deal with stress or deal with intense situations differently than others. And in business, it's intense. I mean, we're an operation that's very, it's a multi-headed beast, kind of like Drexel, right? There's a lot of things going on at all times. And there's a lot of things coming at you at all times. And I used to just be the kind of guy that if I got a call or a text message or something from a customer that wasn't happy with something, I just took it so deeply and so internally that this was a personal shot on my integrity and who I am, right? And I just couldn't deal with it. And I would be up at night just thinking about it. And I learned that is the worst type of stress there is. When you take it like that and you internalize it and you take it so deep that you can feel it in your chest, that's the worst kind of stress there is. So you have to find a way to deal with that.
How do you?
I look at things a little bit differently today. When you've been resuscitated twice, you've been on life support, you were told you were going to need at a minimum an internal defibrillator or most likely a heart transplant.
Oh shit!
Those are eye-opening statements. Yeah.
You couldn't leave Florida for a couple months, right?
Correct. I had to stay in Florida because I couldn't fly. Yeah. I couldn't travel. Period. I had an ejection fraction that was at 20. Which is basically a normal adult male is about 55. So I was, dealing with less than 30% of my total heart function. So there's not a lot of gas in the tank when that happens. So I had to rebuild and start over. So to answer your question, today I have to evaluate things differently. I have to look at the situation and I have to, take myself out of that and say, okay, am I really going to let myself get worked up over this? Or am I just going to let my employees and my staff and the team around me do their jobs? And take care of things, and I'll do what I need to do as the owner of the company, but I don't have to be involved in every single detail every day, right? And I have to give it up a little bit, give a little control.
You almost got to jump out of your own skin.
Correct. You have to change your personality.
And then coach yourself.
Yeah, change your personality.
Like don't do this.
Rethink it, because you know what? Let's face it, guys, when you're dead, you're dead. I mean, there is no reset button. You're done. That's it. You're over.
He just talked about that earlier this week, You're giving the example of how many places here in Campbellsport have been around for years and years and years and years. And 50 years ago, right, it was the most important thing in the world to them. But 50 years later, people are like,
right? No, people. I always say all these little Main Street businesses. There are just these families and people vested in losing sleep and had so much pride in their little business. 50 years later, we don't even know what their business names were. It does not matter.
No.
We talked about obituaries. I like reading obituaries, and it might sound morbid, but it reminds me constantly. You get about 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
It's your siblings, it's who died before you, it's where the visitation is, it's a welcoming paragraph, and then it's you.
Yep.
And it's the stuff that your kids write, right? So it might not even really be you. Yeah. Oh, Grandpa liked the fish. He's like, I didn't like the fish that much, but it's in my obituary. Like you don't pick.
Correct.
And probably a paragraph's where you worked.
Yeah.
Which for a lot of us is impactful, but it's still that's what I get. I get my work career, and then I get 3 sentences of, he enjoyed the Packers. I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
And I'm winding myself up to the point where it's hurting my health.
Yeah.
Not hurting my health, it's hurting who I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just my heart. It's not a good life.
And I didn't know Glenn pre-heart attack, but sat through quite a few meetings. In plenty of them, the chair just kind of leans back a little bit, and the room keeps going. And when you need to chime in, you chime in, and then.
Yeah, that's what it has to be today.
And it's important. 20 years ago, Glenn and I would go at it. I mean, Joel, the trusses have to be here tomorrow at 9:00, and I would sell my soul to make sure that happened for him.
You would always be like, I'll make it happen. Don't worry, it's going to happen. And then you call me 20 minutes later and say, Glenn, I don't know if I can make it happen.
And then Glenn
you always made it happen.
And then Glenn would say, I believe in you, you can, and I got to go. Click. Exactly. And I tried telling him I couldn't. He's like,
I've never been a good listener.
Joe, that's not going to work. But thank you for keep trying.
I've never been a good listener.
Step 2. No, I mean, we would literally almost kill ourselves to make that trust happen on that time. And again, looking back, what if a day mattered?
Correct. Yeah. Well, it's just you just wanted to avoid disappointing the customer. That's what
it
all
was.
came down to.
And it was a little ego. It was a little ego and pride. If anybody can do it, Glenn Elmer and Joel Fleischman can make the shop happen. I mean, let's be honest. There was a little bit of ego, a lot of ego.
And we did. And we always did.
Hey,
we always came.
Cheers to that, right? And we still do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But hopefully with a little less stress.
Correct. And it's just those are life-changing events and things that you reflect back on now. And it's like, well, been through that, done that, and now I'm here, and I was given a second chance, and don't mess it up.
But we also don't. We weren't empowering our team, like you said. You both said that. I said that. You and I were making the miracles happen, and I'm guessing the team felt left out. Like I could do that too, but Glenn and Joe are going to put this fire out for me, so that cool on them, right?
Right, and that's the thing. And once you start believing your people to know that, hey, I mean, I was gone for 2 months. Where I never set foot in the office for 2
Before that,
months.
You were running it from Florida.
Yeah, I was literally. Yeah, I mean, this is you'll think this is terrible of me, but I was on life support in the hospital on the phone with my predecessors, telling them what they needed to do in order to move forward without me. So that was the conversation, and who the hell does that?
Yeah.
Today, looking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? I should. You know what? You guys will figure it out. It'll be okay.
I would go on a 5-day all-inclusive thing, right, with like couples or my family even, like to Florida. Mm-hmm. And if Dad didn't work half the time, right, like it'd be 7 a.m. and my wife and kids would be like, "Well, Dad, we'll see you at the beach," and I might show up at 10.
Yep.
And I took that as great pride, and that's just what we do. And looking back, I'm like, I worked half of the trip.
Yeah, and you really wish you hadn't done that, don't you?
Well, and what did I accomplish?
Correct.
Again, I got your trust as an hour earlier. Yep. Okay, cool. Nobody else could have did that.
Right. No. We all have those stories, and that's really.
But if somebody listening can learn from us, figure it out.
Yep.
Put things in place that won't get you.
100%.
I think you and I would have been sitting exactly where we are, being the same humans, if we would have shut the phones off.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, I 100% couldn't agree more. Wish I could go back and do things differently. I think everybody would say that, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I'm pretty grateful for where I am today and the way things have played out and how my career has advanced. I went through the series of working from the very bottom, literally starting the first job at mowing lawns as a property manager, all the way up to the point where I had the opportunity to become a co-owner of Adashun Jones Real Estate Signature Homes with my business partner Kevin Jones, and that was the aha moment for me. It's like, okay, all this time and all this energy and all this hard work, I finally got there. That was the objective from day one for me.
That's so cool. That's such a cool story. I think we're pretty close, right?
Yeah, we just hit 32, 33.
Right, so it's pretty close. But I got one more question before we get into it. Mm-hmm. We didn't get real into. You guys are a diverse and large company. You see your signs all over the place, but you're also a construction company, which I'm assuming some people don't know. How many builds do you do a year? And then how many real estate deals do you do a year? Because it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, so on the construction side, between renovations, and new construction, we specialize in a little more on the luxury home side, with waterfront being our biggest specialty.
Which is amazing, because I remember having lunch with you. This is 15 years ago. Maybe it's the downturn. Maybe it's right out of the downturn. I vividly remember having lunch with you. You're like, we're going to start going after the high end. What do you think? I don't know if you remember that conversation. I remember where I was sitting for that conversation. And I was like, I think that's a really good idea in the Fond du Lac market. Because you were kind of all over the board. Whatever the home, you had some high, some, you were all, and not that you don't do that, but to get to the level where you were and had that visualization is pretty cool, because I remember you asking me that.
Well, I sat back and thought to myself, what's our identity? What are we trying to accomplish here? Because we had, that time, we had maybe 50 salespeople on the real estate side. And
what year do you think that was when you really had that epiphany?
Oh, it would probably be early, 2012, 23, 24, 25, somewhere in there. Or no, I'm sorry, 2000, 2003, 4, somewhere in there.
Right, okay.
Where we really dug into that. That was my hope, was to go that direction, but we really focused on it, right? Yep. We were building all, like you said, we were doing a little bit of everything. We were scattered. Sure. Yep. I mean, we were building little bitty ranches here, building, more custom homes over here, and just really all over the boards, and never really had a focus.
Which is hard for your subcontractors, because am I focusing on this, or am I focusing on a 6,000 square foot house?
What's your identity? What are you all about when you think about what your identity is? So we retooled that, and then we kind of went a little bit after the higher end concept, higher end product, but then also on the waterfront, really, because waterfront I thought was a unique opportunity, because there really wasn't anybody specializing in waterfront. Where it's like, okay, you need to know a lot about waterfront. If you're going to build a home on waterfront, it's complex. It's not a simple thing at all. And you need to know everything there is to know about it before you even start, right?
And you and I had talked about it, I don't know if you remember that. And it was like, one of the things that I brought up at that conversation was the east side at that time of Lake Winnebago was wildly underdeveloped.
Yeah, still is.
In my opinion, still is. It's still an absolute gem.
Greatest growth area right there for us.
And I think you guys have capitalized that, and I think that's been wonderful. It really has.
I agree, and that's been kind of our focus. So the construction company is between 20 to 30 projects a year. Varying anything from the renovations. The largest renovation we did this year was $3 million.
That's crazy renovation. For
sure. Waterfront, big green. Mm-hmm. And then we do a lot of, the average contract sale for us the last 4 or 5 years in a row is about $900,000 and up. And
which isn't as impressive as it used to be, right? Like that's not the biggest house in the world
anymore.
No, it's still a very wonderful contract. It's still not to shame anybody less or more or anything like that. It's crazy. 20 years ago, 900,000. You're like, whoa. Now you're like, well, it's probably a nice 3-bedroom ranch.
It's funny because it gets a little distorted because you might build
distorted
10 homes at 700, but then you build 4 homes at $3 million.
Yeah, right.
And then it gets distorted. But that's been on the construction side of it. That's been pretty much where we've been comfortable and able to manage it and able to do a good job with it, right? The real estate side is a different animal. That operation is at about 100 salespeople now today, 3 locations. We do last year did $250 million in sales, and it's a monster. 1,200 transactions.
1,200 transactions.
Grand opening in Oshkosh.
Yes, coming up. Yeah, coming up in August or October 18th, I believe, 17th or 18th, something like that. I should know that. But yeah, we just did a complete
Or you shouldn't. We just talked about stress. Or you shouldn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited about that because that's Oshkosh. We've been there over 30 years, and we've been in the same location for 30 years, and we have never really done anything to kind of to rebrand and state where we are and who we are and what we're all about there. So we changed our Oshkosh facility into a hybrid of the Fond du Lac facility, where it's really a design build center and a real estate office simultaneously. And I'm so impressed with my design crew and the team that put that together and how beautiful it is. And I hope you guys can make that opening.
Shout out to Matthew. Shout out to Tina.
Yeah, Matthew and Tina and Frank and Travis and Mason and our whole team. They just did a incredible job. We have an on-staff interior designer at our Oshkosh office who's a realtor as well, Michelle Kramer, and she jumped in on that project in the very beginning. She said, I want to be a part of this. So we did this. It was a collaborative effort, and when you see it, I think you'll be quite happy.
Four. I keep going. I got to go back to it because you just went through it quick. That's 4 deals every single day of the year, holidays, weekends, weekdays. 4 real estate. If you've ever bought real estate or sold it, which I've done plenty, that's a beast. That is a beast.
It's a machine.
Oh, it's a machine.
Yeah,
it's a machine. I think we're here. We're at the end.
Yeah. So you got a billboard. It's on Highway 41. Everybody in the world can see it. What's it say? Why? Is it work related? Family related? Just something that means something special to you?
What's funny about that is I didn't even know it was there. I was in the checkout at Festival Foods yesterday. And one of the checkout gals goes, I know who you are. And I said, that's funny. I don't know who you are. She's a young gal, probably a high school girl. She goes, no, I know who you are. I just don't know how. And I said, well, I'm involved with Adashun Jones Real Estate and Signature Homes. And I said, you might see my face every once in a while on a Facebook post or something like that. And she goes, you're on a billboard on 41. And I'm like, you got to be kidding, right? And she goes, no. She goes, no, I'm serious. I just saw it. I drove by it. That's how I know who you are. So I had to go buy it.
Is that the one by the airport kind of?
Yeah, it's right by.
So you're the first guy, because we always ask this billboard question every single time.
You're the only one that actually have one.
You're the only one that actually has his own billboard with his face on it.
Well, it's pretty funny because it's myself and my business partner, And it's just a branding, billboard of we've been here a long time, and we've been committed to our communities. We like to think that the live here, work here, give here concept that we have as a real estate firm is true, and it's something that we live every single day, much like you guys do right here. When I think of Drexel, I think of Campbell Sport. Right? Even though you're so much bigger than that, right? You guys stretch and you reach such a much larger audience, and it's incredible what you guys have done with this operation. And I'm proud to be a part of that. As somebody that's been with you almost 30 years. But when it comes down to it, the real estate side of it is the same concept, and the building side for us, we truly are rooted in Fond du Lac and Oshkosh and Green Lake. That's our home. That's where we are. All of our employees live in those markets. All of our we live and breathe and die there, essentially. So, I'm proud of that. So that billboard to me is kind of that. It's just basically saying we're here, and we appreciate everybody in this community, and we're certainly trying, to make an impact.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. Hey, Glenn, thank you for the business for 30 years, and thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
guys. Appreciate it.
Go Crew.
Go Crew.
Go Crew.
113.
And go Packers.
Yeah, go Pack-O.